Hi everybody, Coach Beth here at Viking Vitality. Welcome back to the channel. If it is your first time, hello and welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. Our last video, I went over some of the benefits and whys that I had seen from other people via videos, readings, so on and so forth. So I'm going to come on today and talk about my whys, things that I'm tracking, kind of an idea of what I'm doing right now, and just some things I've noticed so far. I've got my notes here, so let's just dive right in. The first thing I want to start with is I have found as a fitness coach and then as myself that when you change your diet or make any change in your life, that you run into some mental blocks. So something I noticed very much quickly, I'd say in the first few hours of starting this, is old, even healthy habits kind of coming in and having to pause for a second, like you reach for this thing that you're expecting, you're going to have that day, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm not actually having that, okay. Or if you're at the store and you think, oh, I need to buy this item, and then you're like, oh wait, no, I don't need to buy that item. So it's a bit throwing, but it's also kind of simplifying once you get your brain used to it. Navigating being and eating outside of my house. Now, I have spent a number of years, especially in the last couple of years, as I have found some food intolerances, having to navigate being places and taking food with me, so on and so forth. And that I have managed to do rather well. Moving towards this ketovore, carnivore type of situation, it has been a bit more challenging, sticking with things that are, just in the diet, as opposed to what I was doing before. So I'm still working on that. When I go like to an amusement park or something of that nature where I'm just bringing the food with me, I can do pretty good. But then when you go out to a restaurant, it gets a little bit more complicated. Or if you even go out to a restaurant at all, which for the most part, we don't, because we don't really like to spend the money, and a lot of what's there we can make ourselves just as good or better at home for cheaper and with a lot more control of the situation. But it is nice to go out on a date, not to have to do dishes, so on and so forth. Navigating life stress, especially when it comes to things like that you still hold on to that kind of give comfort. Like for me, I really enjoy my coffee, and I'm still having it now. I am having it in as much as a keto fashion as I can manage. I don't add sugar or like flavored creamers or anything like that. I haven't done that in a very long time. I actually have had my coffee black for many years. So nothing in it. Most of the time now I will have my grass-fed butter, coconut oil, which we'll come back to that in a minute, so on and so forth. Cooking for others can also be a mental block / challenge, and I have run into this a lot as a coach speaking to clients when you have a partner in the house or kids or you're living with someone, whatever's going on, and navigating those complications that can arise. So prepping for yourself versus prepping for them, versus when you're eating versus when they're eating. If someone else is bringing junk into the house that you don't want to be a part of, or maybe they're, hey, they're used to you having something and you're trying to say no. So that can be a challenge. And the best thing that I have found as a coach to help clients and people know is when you're going to make a change, you want to communicate it lovingly and kindly to people, and make the statements kind of about you, like, hey, I'm doing this thing for myself for these reasons, so on and so forth. I won't be engaging in X, Y, Z. Please don't offer me any. Thank you so much for the thought, but now here in my house, thankfully, it's not too much of a problem. It's just my husband, myself, and our 3 dogs, and I will prep food ahead of time for him, or maybe I'll cook him something that's part of his dinner. And then I have my own stuff that I can heat up real quick or reheat or whatever. So it's not too much of a challenge here. It's just mentally navigating it. And then sometimes we eat at different times. But those are some of the things that can come up as mental blocks. What I am tracking right now, there was a couple of weeks in the past, a handful of weeks, where I was unable to track. I had a huge life crisis happen, and I just stopped tracking. I stuck relatively to my plan, minus some things that came up, but I was not tracking. But I am back on my tracking now, and I am looking at sleep score, according to my device, which we all know is kind of relative, but at least it can give you a baseline. I struggle with anxiety and a lot of thinking at night and things going on there, some cortisol spiking, so I am going to see as I slowly change things, and then of course try to manage my life stress, where and how I can hopefully get better sleep, because a lot of people in my family do deal with insomnia, and I'd like to not do that personally. So hopefully we can avoid that. But if you're out there, you're dealing with it, I have heard from people that carnivore can help for many reasons, but we'll save that for another video at some point. I'm tracking what I'm eating and drinking other than water, and I may actually start to include water in my tracking just to see how much water I'm drinking, how thirsty I am, that type of thing. My bowel movements, any major energy or mood shifts in my personal life, not just like, oh, somebody cut me off and I was irritated by that or something, but like big shifts for, not a noticeable reason. Overall, what would you call it, view on life, so on and so forth. I'm tracking my cycle. I do have an IUD, and that makes things not scheduled as normal, so I am navigating that, but I am tracking it. I'm tracking my exercise, generally speaking. I'm not like writing down my steps or putting down my reps or anything in my training, but I am generally tracking what I'm doing. I'm tracking my measurements, and I'm doing that via, measuring your waist, your bust, your thighs, things like that. I'm also doing before and after pictures. I'm tracking via pictures. I do not have a scale at the house, as odd as that sounds. We were not actually supposed to stay at this house. We were supposed to have moved long before now, but I don't have a scale here, and I don't really have access to one. Our local gym does not have one for reasons. So, but a couple of weeks ago, I was 140 pounds, fully dressed with boots and jeans on, so I was probably sub 140, and my blood pressure was 102/66, and I felt good. So we have a couple of medical metrics to go off of here. And I'm also keeping an eye on my teeth, which I'll elaborate later in another part of this. So moving on. What I'm doing and my current process. I am focused on slow change, as I think it should really be with any diet or major life change. Now, if you go into like a challenge, then I know things are more accelerated. But for me, with my life stress, with the changes that I'm making specifically, so on and so forth, slow but sustainable. When you move into a carnivore or just, a high-fat, low-carb diet, you can experience a lot of different body stresses. So I'm trying to make it slow and sustainable in light of the life stress that I'm dealing with. I would even say that there are probably people who would know, who would look at my life and be like, maybe now is not a good time to do this. And that might be so, but this is what I'm choosing to do. So I'm trying to do it as smart as I feel I can. When I started weeks ago, my goal was to cut down a serving of carbs per day. I was eating all like healthy carbs, but to cut it down. So I did that for a couple of days, and I was actually surprised at how accelerated and quickly I was able to cut that down. There was a few days where I'm gonna cut down one, and I was like, you know what, I'm just not gonna have any carbs today and see how I feel. And I actually did pretty good. So I'm still in more of a ketovore type of place, animal-based type of place. Like, it's not strict carnivore, and that's due to the coffee, the coconut oil that I use in my coffee, because coconut oil is cheaper than butter. Sorry. This is where I am. We're all on a journey. It's okay. And then, let's see, I'm also working with doing a 24-hour fast once per week, and I had some decent luck with this weeks past, but then life got very stressful and whatnot, and I have found that I may try to experiment with a different type of fast, like a fat fast or something of that nature. I was speaking to someone more experienced and explaining what I was experiencing during my 24-hour fast, and they're like, well, you're kind of already lean, and you might not be feasting enough beforehand, and the life stress might just kind of be combining to be a bit too much, so maybe try one of these. So I may be shifting over to one of those, but it is a goal of mine to shift over to one of those, or to be able to get myself to such a healed place that the 24-hour fast is, doable, and I can get the benefits of those items. Before I move on to my whys, I want to take a moment to point out some things that I have noticed so far in these last several weeks. And something that kind of came up very quickly and I was just really amused by was that things are simpler. Once you know what you're doing, you know, like you get a gist, even if you're not making the fancy recipes or whatever, you just kind of like know, okay, no, I eat this, and I eat this, and I eat this, and I eat none of that. Just once you get past that part, I was very quick to notice that I'm like, hey, there's no vegetable chopping going on, which I'm someone who, I really enjoyed going to the farmer's market. I love supporting my local farmers, and I would get, you know, bundles, lots, like bulk, you know, beets or green beans or whatever, and I'd bring it all home and I'd chop it up and I'd roast it and freeze it or just freeze it, whatever needed to be done with it. And it took a long time. And I didn't mind doing it because I liked saving the money and getting the healthy things and whatever, but it was really a pain in the ass. And I haven't had to do that, so that's really awesome. I also need minimal dishes, pots, pans, so on and so forth, very minimal. Like I could, if I knew 100% like what exactly I needed going forward, I could probably go in and get rid of at least half of the stuff in my kitchen, if not more. Now that does depend on what you're doing. If you're making like more fancier things like carnivore ice cream and things like that, you might want some equipment, but things got a lot simpler. As far as like getting the lots of vegetables and roasting them and stuff, being as I'm not doing that, it has very minimal oven use, which in the summertime is great. To not have the oven running. So there's a lot of just microwave when needed, room temperature food, which I've done for a long time now, or even food that's cold is the most pleasant, no, but when you're satisfied, you know, you'll kind of get past it. I needed to do that a lot on the road. Pro tip, if you're on the road, you have your container of food, if you can safely set it on the dash, nature's microwave is the sun, so that's kind of cool. Using the air fryer and the cast iron skillet, which can be used for multiple things. I'll defrost a couple of things like a steak, some slices of homemade Lorne sausage, which I make with pork rind breadcrumbs, for those of you that know what it is, not using regular breadcrumbs or anything like that. So I'll cook the steak, I'll take that out, I'll put the sausage in, let that cook, might put some of the bacon wrapped egg cheese muffins in there to warm up, you know, so lots of multi-use right in that pan there. And then with any diet, and in the fitness industry, we encourage staying on the outskirts of the store where all the non-packaged goods are. And being on carnivore makes this really easy to stay on the outskirts of the store. There's like 3 places you need to go to. You can get your stuff and you can get out. So it's really kind of nice. All right, moving on to this last part and we'll wrap it up. So my whys, I am working on body composition. I am looking for, I want to say leaner, but more like lean muscle, so getting some more lines, getting stronger. I'm not necessarily trying to bulk up or anything, but I do want to be stronger. I do want to grow my muscles. I have a couple of things working against me right now in that regard. I have a whiplash injury, which has messed with a lot of the connections, and I'm working to work on that, but doing the best I can in the meantime. I also want to stay functional. I am going on 40 and that's not old, but I would like to be functional for as long as I'm here. If I have to be here on this earth, I'd like to be functional through it. So just stronger, functional, mobile, so on and so forth in terms of body composition. It is not like in the toilet or anything like that, but I think we can all agree that most of the time it's nice to see an increase in that for most people. Stopping the hangry, which is something I've experienced for a long time. I don't experience it quite as bad so far in the last few weeks, so I'm curious about getting everything adjusted and just, you know, to be hungry without getting into a full hangry state. I'm very interested in the simplicity once you get everything going with the diet. I also am looking for some skin improvement. I get what I would call like some heat bumps perhaps, like on my thighs here and there, and I'm looking to see if this diet will help clear that up, because I haven't gotten a full understanding of why I get it. So I'm kind of hoping for that. It's gotten better over the years as I've changed my diet, but if I can clear it up fully or even more than it already is, that would just be nice, you know. Dealing with depression, anxiety. I experience sensory overload in some places too. Like if I go somewhere and there's a lot of people or it's very loud, then it can just be a little bit too much for me mentally. I don't know if this diet can help with it, but I am hoping for that, maybe in connection with helping with anxiety, so on and so forth. Pro tip, if you're somebody who experiences a lot of anxiety or sensory overload in crowded places, you can always put on some headphones, whether you're listening to something or not, or maybe put in some light earplugs just to help block some of the noise, and that can help with calming you in loud, busy situations, so that if you have a lot of stimulus coming in, at least you can kind of dull some of it. So pro tip there. General mood, going back to the comment about teeth health, so I have a little bit of tartar going on. My main concern though is that I have little to no enamel on my teeth, and eating certain things is actually painful. I have found that being on this carnivore diet and eating this way, that there's nothing that's hurting my teeth, which is really wonderful, and none of what I'm eating is breaking my enamel down further, so that's really great too. I also have a family history of teeth issues, so if I can help, that'd be awesome. Some joint issues, which I can't necessarily explain what I have going on because I haven't gone to the doctor for most of it, because it doesn't seem like the things that the doctors can help me with. It might just be something I have to deal with, but lowering some inflammation and pain there would be good. Let's see, I have a family history of type 2 diabetes from a handful of people. We have some cancers. Some of them are fatal, or some have been fatal. My mom passed in October of 2021. And autoimmune issues, which my mom had several, and there are several floating throughout the family as well. I do struggle with some circulation issues, depending on the season, so on and so forth, and I may have something autoimmune related, like my sister has struggled with Reynolds, and she has been doing the carnivore diet since the beginning of this year, and she has gotten that under control, as well as several other things that she's been working on healing, so I have some hope there as well. The last thing I'm going to wrap up with, I actually have some extra notes on, so I'm going to look a little bit further away, but I am part of generations of the DES daughters, and I'll let y'all know what that is. It is a drug that I'm not going to try to pronounce. If you want to look it up, please do. It's DES. It's a synthetic estrogen. It was prescribed to pregnant women from the late 1940s to the early 1970s to prevent miscarriages and other pregnancy complications. It was later discovered that DES exposure in utero led to serious health issues for both the women who took the drug and their children. The daughters of DES are referred to as DES daughters, and they are women who were exposed to DES in the womb. Notation here, it doesn't just affect the mother and the child that was had, it will actually go down through the generations too, because it's kind of in the system now. DES daughters are at an increased risk for a rare form of vaginal and cervical cancer, reproductive tract structural differences, and pregnancy complications, amongst other health issues. So my grandmother at the time, at the time that she was alive, was having some issues. They came out with this drug. They're like, it's this great thing. They didn't know until later that it was a problem. As with, many things, we have a good idea and then we find out, well, maybe not. So mom was affected by this, and mom actually did form a rare form of cervical cancer that did eventually take her life. So my siblings and I take this fairly serious. My sister and I, obviously, especially being as we're, the women, and this stuff does come down through the generations. So anything that was messed up in the DNA or our genes, we want to keep those negative things at bay as much as we can. So that's the summary of what I'm doing, what I've seen, my whys so far, and I'm going to wrap it up here so that we can see each other in the next video. If you guys are doing carnivore or ketovore or anything like that, let me know in the comments below. Let me know what you're experiencing, what your whys are, all the things. And I thank you guys so much for being here.